Why not just leave in silence? No message, no last word, no explanation wrapped in pain. Just a door closing, gently, finally, like a warrior who knows he's done fighting. Not because he lost, but because the battle was never worth it. Some people don't deserve a reaction. Some places don't deserve a goodbye. Some endings only need your absence. And in that absence, you say everything without speaking. No defense, no drama, just stillness that carries more power than any final word. Because silence, when chosen, is a declaration, and walking away, quietly, can be the loudest thing you'll ever do. They'll say you owe them a conversation, that silence is cruel, that walking away without a word is cowardice. But they're wrong, because not all exits need applause, not every ending deserves noise. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. No fight, no closure, just peace in your own 2 feet, turning away. This isn't about running, it's about knowing when to stop bleeding into places that never tried to heal you. And once you see it, really see it, you'll understand something most people never do. Silence isn't weakness, it's a decision. And this is why you walk away without saying a word. You explained, you waited, you gave space, you lowered your voice just so they could hear better. And still, they didn't. Not because you were unclear, but because they were unwilling. Some people don't listen to understand. They listen to defend, to delay, to dodge. You weren't speaking into a conversation. You were speaking into a wall. And walls don't echo. They absorb, they drain, they numb. So you try again and again. And one day you realize it's not that they don't get it, it's that they don't want to. Because if they understood you, they'd have to change. And comfort prefers blindness. So you stop, not out of spite, not out of pride, but because peace starts where repetition ends. You leave, quietly, because the loudest silence is the one that doesn't need to explain itself anymore. You don't owe them clarity. You already gave it, in words, in patience, in nights spent rehearsing how to make it sound softer. But the truth isn't always soft, and you're not here to protect their comfort. You're here to protect your sanity. They ask why you're quiet now, why you pulled away, why you left without a final word. And here's why. Because everything you could have said, you already did, just not in a way they wanted to accept. You don't owe closure to those who ignored your opening. You don't owe softness to those who mistook your kindness for weakness. And you definitely don't owe another version of the same explanation to people committed to misunderstanding you. That's not peace, that's emotional debt. So let them wonder, let them spin, let them sit in the silence they created. You don't need them to get it. You just need to be done. There comes a point when speaking costs you more than staying silent. A point where defending yourself feels like begging, where trying to explain feels like kneeling. And that's when you know it's time to leave. Not in anger, not in noise, but in dignity, because your value isn't proven by how long you fight to be understood. It's revealed by how quickly you walk away when you're not. The Stoics didn't argue with chaos. They didn't justify their calm. They just left when peace was no longer possible. You don't have to slam the door, you just have to close it and never return to beg for it to open again. Let them call it cold, let them twist the silence. That's not your business anymore. Because sometimes, the only thing left to protect is your silence. And the only thing left to carry is your pride. Walking away doesn't mean you lost. It means you saw. You saw the pattern, you saw the drain, you saw yourself slowly disappearing, and you chose to stop bleeding for it. That's not weakness, that's clarity. Most people stay because it's easier than changing, because the pain is familiar, because leaving feels like failure. But it's not. It's wisdom. The Stoics didn't cling. They didn't explain their exit. They didn't perform their peace. They just left, when staying became self-betrayal. You don't owe your strength to every room that drains it. You don't have to lose more just to prove you tried. Leave. Even if your voice shakes, even if they call it quitting, Because real power is knowing when to end something before it ends you. And sometimes the strongest one is the first to walk away. The more you explain, the less they respect it. Because people don't value words they feel entitled to ignore. And the truth is, if someone truly cared, you wouldn't have to repeat yourself. Over-explaining is emotional bleeding. It's offering your peace to those who only come to drain it. The Stoics never begged to be understood. They spoke once, clearly, calmly. And if that wasn't enough, they walked. Because every extra word makes you sound less certain. Every extra chance makes you look more desperate. Not because you are, but because the effort starts to cheapen the truth. You said it, they heard it, they chose not to care. That's not on you. That's your signal to stop. So, let your silence say what your explanations never could. I meant what I said, and I'm done repeating it. They knew. They just didn't care. They heard the shift in your tone. They saw the change in your eyes. They felt the gap growing every time they crossed the line. But they ignored it, because pretending not to notice was easier than having to act different. You don't need to re-explain. You don't need to break it down for someone committed to misunderstanding you. This isn't about clarity. It's about accountability. And some people will do anything to avoid holding it, even act confused. The Stoics didn't fight for recognition. They observed, accepted, moved on. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Their ignorance was a choice, and yours is now too. So choose peace. Choose distance. Choose the exit they never saw coming. No speech, no fight, just the quiet truth of someone who knows better and finally walks like it. The longer you stay, the less of you remains. Not all damage comes from violence. Some comes from repeated small exits. You leaving yourself a little more each time you say it's fine when it's not. You shrink, you twist, you make yourself palatable to survive what should have been left. Until one day, you look in the mirror and don't recognize what's still standing. The Stoics didn't teach self-sacrifice. They taught self-possession. And no connection is worth losing your center. Not love, not history, not loyalty wrapped in pain. You weren't born to be tolerated. You weren't built to be eroded by proximity. So if staying costs you your self-respect, your clarity, your peace, then leaving isn't abandonment, it's recovery. And you don't need their permission to come back to you. Dignity doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't beg, doesn't explain, doesn't chase clarity from people who threw it away. It just stands still. And when it's time, it leaves. The Stoics knew this, that the highest form of strength wasn't in staying longer, but in knowing when to walk without fanfare. Silence isn't empty. It's full of self-respect. It says, I won't fight to stay where I'm no longer valued. I won't prove my worth to someone who never saw it. You don't have to say you're done. You just have to be done. And the quiet that follows, that's not weakness. That's dignity, at peace. No revenge, no explanation, just exit. You can forgive and still leave. Forgiveness doesn't mean returning. It doesn't mean rebuilding. It doesn't mean pretending nothing broke. It means you're done carrying the weight, done replaying the story, done tying your peace to their apology. The Stoics forgave freely, but they didn't forget what peace cost them. Forgiveness is internal. It's quiet. It's powerful. And it doesn't require a second chance. You don't owe them space just because you release the anger. You don't owe them access just because your heart is soft. Some bridges need to burn for your soul to breathe. So forgive, but walk. Not because you hate them, but because you finally love yourself more. Forgiveness is freedom. And freedom doesn't always look back. You didn't vanish. You evolved. You left without a word, not because you were weak, but because you were done performing. Some exits aren't escapes, they're ascensions. The Stoics didn't shout when they left. They didn't defend the silence. They simply disappeared from what no longer matched their standard. And when they returned, they didn't need to say a thing. Because energy doesn't need to explain. Peace doesn't need permission. Presence doesn't need to prove itself. You didn't go quiet to hide. You went quiet to gather your thoughts, your strength, yourself, and now you walk back in, unbothered, untouched, unshakable. No vengeance, no noise, just the kind of calm that makes the whole room go still. Because when you leave right, you don't come back louder. You come back untouchable. Strength was never in the exit. It was in the silence that followed it. Not the kind that waits to be chased, not the kind that hopes they'll notice, but the kind that says, I've made peace with leaving, and I don't need you to understand it. You didn't slam the door. You didn't write a final paragraph. You just left with your head up and your energy intact. And that silence, it said more than your voice ever could. It told them, you won't fight to stay. You won't prove your worth again. You won't keep bleeding just to keep the connection alive. And now they know, even if they act like they don't, that when you went quiet, they lost something they'll never be able to reach again. Not because you disappeared, but because you ascended. And the ones who rise don't come back to explain.